You are standing at the mirror right now, aren't you? Brush in one hand, can of hairspray in the other, teasing at the crown, spraying it stiff, patting it down, hoping today it finally looks fuller. I did that same dance every single morning for years, and I want you to stop, because the very thing you were taught to do to make thin hair look thicker is the exact thing making it look thinner, older, and more sparse than it actually is. I know how that sounds. I did not believe it either, not until I dug into where these hair rules came from and found out most of them were never about looking good. They were about selling you something, or keeping you easy to manage, or making you fade politely into the background. And the styling habits you trust most are aging you by 10 years, maybe more. I found the proof in an old salon training practice from the 1950s, a hair science finding about light and scalp, and one colorist principle almost nobody says out loud. By the time I am done, you will see your own hair completely differently. And here's the part I need you to hear before anything else. You will not need to buy one new product, cut it all off, or spend a dime. Everything I'm about to hand you works with the hair on your head this very morning. Welcome to Timeless Style Living, where we dig into the honest, buried truths behind the beauty rules we were all handed and hand you back what actually works. I remembered the moment it hit me. I was sitting in a salon chair, the kind with the cracked vinyl arms, and a stylist barely out of her 20s leaned over me and said, so gently it stung, "We'll just take some length off, it'll be easier at your age." Easier for who? I smiled and said fine, like I always did. I went home shorter, curlier, stiffer, and older. That was the day I started asking questions instead of just obeying. So let me hand you what I found. Not opinions, the buried stuff. And before we go further, subscribe to Timeless Style Living right now, because we do this every single week and I do not want you to miss what is coming. Let's start with the curl. The tight, tidy, sprayed into place curl that so many of us were pushed toward the second we crossed a certain age. You know the look. The wash and set, the perm every 6 weeks, the little cap of curls that is supposed to be low maintenance and flattering for mature hair. I believed that was simply what older women's hair was supposed to look like. I thought the curl added body. I thought it hid the thinning. It does the opposite. And once you understand why, you can never unsee it. Here's the truth about thin hair and curl. When hair is fine or sparse, every tight curl creates a gap. Curl pulls strands up and away from each other, and in those gaps, your scalp shows through. The tighter the curl, the more separation, the more scalp. So the very style sold to us as the fix for thinning is a style that puts your thinning on display under any overhead light. Your kitchen, the grocery store, the church hall. Those little curls cast tiny shadows and reveal every bit of bare scalp between them. You end up looking like you have far less hair than you actually do. Now, where did this curl obsession even come from? Because it was not an accident. Go back to the 1950s and 60s, when the neighborhood beauty salon was the center of a woman's grooming life. The whole business model ran on the weekly appointment. You came in, you got washed, you got set in rollers, you sat under the dryer, and you paid. Then you protected that set for a whole week, sleeping on it, wrapping it, not washing it until you came back and paid again. The permanent wave was the golden goose of that world, because a perm locked you into a cycle of returning every few weeks for a touch-up. The industry did not push tight curls on older women because tight curls flattered thin hair. They pushed them because that set held longer on fragile hair and kept the appointment book full. Easy to manage meant easy for the salon to keep you coming back. That phrase you have heard your whole life, low maintenance, age appropriate, sensible for your hair. A lot of it traces straight back to a business that needed your standing weekly booking more than it needed you to look your best.
I'm not saying every stylist meant harm. Most inherited the same rules and never questioned them, exactly like we did not. But the origin matters, because once you know a rule was built to sell rather than to flatter, you are free to break it.
So what do you do instead? You do not need to fight your natural texture, and you do not need a chemical straightener either. You just want to loosen and soften. Trade the tight curl for a soft bend, a loose wave, or even a smooth finish with the ends turned under. When strands lie closer together instead of springing apart, they overlap. Overlapping strands cover scalp. Coverage reads as density. It is that simple. A soft, low wave will always look thicker than a tight curl on fine hair because the hair is doing what thin hair needs most, staying together, not separating. If you set your hair, use bigger rollers and fewer of them. If you use a curling iron, use a wider barrel and only bend the hair rather than coiling it. And if your hair is naturally curly, you are not the enemy here. The goal is to keep curls grouped and defined rather than frizzed and separated, because clumped curls cover scalp, while frizzy, separated ones expose it. And that change alone can take years off. But it opens up a bigger question, and this one made me angry when I finally understood it, because the curl was never the deepest lie I had been told. If what I'm sharing today is resonating with you, I want you to know I went much further down this road and put everything I found into a series of digital books: Style Reset, Styled Deeper, and Styled Complete. They're the place where I laid out every buried principle in full, with nothing rushed and nothing left out, because some of this material simply needs more space than a video can hold. You can find all the details in the description below, and if you have ever felt like you were given someone else's rules to live by, I think you will feel right at home inside those pages. Now, let's talk about the deepest lie, the one about length, because this is where the story gets even more personal. You have heard it. I heard it for decades. Women over a certain age should cut their hair short. It gets repeated like a law of nature. Short is younger. Short is neater. Long hair drags your face down and makes you look like you are clinging to your youth. I cut mine short again and again, always a little shorter, always trusting that shorter was the mature, tasteful, correct choice. And every time I felt smaller afterward, like I had trimmed off a piece of myself along with the length. So I went looking for where this rule started, who decided long hair had an expiration date. What I found is that this rule is barely 100 years old, and for most of human history, the exact opposite was true. Long hair on a mature woman was a sign of status, health, and dignity. Women grew their hair for a lifetime and wore it up, pinned and coiled, as a mark of adulthood and respect. Cutting it off was the shocking, rebellious act, not keeping it long. The short hair for older women idea really took hold in the 20th century, and it braided together with the same salon economy and later with a youth-obsessed marketing machine that decided older women were a problem to be tidied away. Short hair on older women got framed as sensible and dignified, but read between the lines, and what it often meant was invisible, contained, not drawing attention. A whole generation of us was quietly styled to disappear, and we were told it was for our own good. Now, here is where I have to be honest with you, because I am not going to swing the other way and tell you everyone over 60 must grow their hair to their waist. That is just trading one rule for another. The truth is more useful than that, and it is this: length was never really the problem. Weight was. Let me explain, because this is the part almost nobody gets right. When fine hair is cut short and then heavily layered, which is what most stylists do the moment they hear thin hair, they layer it to add movement. The layering slices the hair into thinner and thinner sections. Each layer removes bulk. On thick hair, that is welcome. On thin hair, it is a disaster. You are taking hair that is already sparse and thinning it further until the ends look wispy, see-through, and stringy. That stringy, feathery, faded out edge is one of the single most aging things that can happen to hair because it mimics the exact thinning we are trying to hide. The fix is not necessarily length. The fix is a blunt line. When hair is cut with a strong, blunt edge, whether that is at the chin, the collarbone, or the shoulder, all of the hair arrives at the bottom at the same point. That gathers the density. The ends look full, solid, and intentional instead of thin and trailing off. A blunt bob at the jaw can look twice as thick as a short layered cut, using the exact same amount of hair. Same hair, completely different illusion, all because of where the hair ends and how it ends. So if you have been keeping it cropped and layered because you were told that is what thin hair needs, you may have been thinning the look of your hair on purpose without ever knowing it. Ask for weight kept at the ends. Ask for a blunt or barely layered line. Ask them to stop texturizing and point cutting the ends into oblivion. Those little snipping techniques that feel so professional are often quietly carving away the fullness you have left. I want you to picture two women the same age with the exact same thin hair. One has a short, choppy, layered cut, sprayed and separated. The other has a blunt bob that skims her jaw, soft and smooth, ends turned gently under. The first looks like she is managing a problem. The second looks expensive. The difference costs nothing. It was never about how much hair you have. It was about how the hair is arranged. But here's what stopped me cold when I realized it. Even with the right cut, most of us are still sabotaging our hair every single morning with our own two hands. And this next habit is so common, so trusted, that calling it out almost feels like betrayal. I am talking about volume, the whole crusade for volume. We have been trained to believe that thin hair needs to be pumped up, teased, backcombed, blasted with volumizing mousse, sprayed stiff at the roots, and lifted as high as it will go. More height, we were told, means more youth. So we tease the crown until it is a bird's nest and lacquer it in place. I did it for years. My poor crown took the worst of it. Here is what teasing actually does to thin, fragile, aging hair. Backcombing works by roughing up and breaking the outer layer of the strand so the hairs tangle and stack on each other. On young, thick hair, you get away with it. On mature hair, which is naturally finer, drier, and more brittle than it was at 30, that friction snaps strands. It creates breakage, little broken hairs that stick up, frizz, and never grow back to length. So the daily teasing that is supposed to give you more hair is literally reducing how much hair you have, one broken strand at a time. You are trading tomorrow's fullness for today's fake height. And the height itself betrays you. A teased, lifted crown pulls the hair up and away from the scalp, and you already know where this is going. That separation reveals scalp. All that lift creates see-through gaps right at the top of your head, which is exactly where thinning shows first for most women. So the volume trick spotlights the one area you most want to soften. Under bright light, a teased crown can look like a thin veil stretched over bare scalp. It is the curl problem all over again, just aimed at the top of your head. Then comes the hairspray, the stiff, crunchy helmet finish. Stiff hair does not move, and hair that does not move reads as sparse and brittle, because real, healthy, abundant hair has softness and give. The shellacked look is one of the fastest ways to age yourself, because nothing about it looks alive. It looks set, fixed, managed, and managed is the enemy of elegant. So what do you do instead of teasing and spraying? This is the part I promised you. The part for the woman who is thinking, that is fine for someone with money and a fancy salon, but I cannot afford to change a thing. Good, because this costs nothing. You already own everything you need. You do not even need to buy a different shampoo. The first free change is your part. Where you part your hair is one of the most powerful tools you have, and it is completely free. Most of us have parted our hair in the same place for 30, 40, 50 years. And when you part in the same spot for decades, the hair learns to fall flat there, the part widens, and the scalp along that line shows more and more. Here is the trick. Take your part and move it. Just shift it. If you part on the left, try the center or the right. If you part down the middle, try pushing it to one side. When you move the part, you are asking hair that has spent years lying flat one way to suddenly lie the other way. It resists, and that resistance creates natural lift at the root. Real lift from the direction of the hair, not from teased and damaged. It also covers the old widened part line with fresh hair. Do it tonight. Part your hair on the opposite side or shift it over an inch and sleep on it. In the morning, you will have root volume you did not pay for and a fuller looking crown because you have redirected the hair to cover the thin line instead of falling into it. No product, no heat, no cost, just a comb and a decision. The second free change is how you dry it. Instead of drying your hair with your head upright and the airflow pushing everything down and flat, flip your head over and dry the roots upside down, aiming the air at the scalp. Gravity does the lifting for you. When you flip back up, the roots stand away from the scalp on their own again. Real volume from direction, not from breakage. If you do not blow dry at all, you can rough dry the roots with a towel by flipping your head down and gently scrunching at the scalp, then letting it air dry free. Uses nothing but the towel you already own. And the third free change is to stop touching it. I mean it. Thin, fine hair collects oil from your hands and your scalp faster than thick hair, and oil is what makes hair clump, separate into strings, and lie flat against the head, revealing scalp. Every time you run your fingers through it, pat it, fuss with it, you're pressing it flatter and greasing it down. Hands off. Let it sit where it falls. You will be shocked how much fuller hair looks the moment you stop handling it all day long. Those three things, moving your part, drying upside down, and keeping your hands off, cost nothing, need nothing new, and can add visible fullness by tomorrow morning. That's the floor. That's what you can do before you have spent a single dollar. If any of these three is landing for you, drop a comment and tell me which one you're trying tonight. I read every single one, and it genuinely helps me plan what we cover next.
But there is one more layer, and this is the one that changes everything. Because even a perfect cut, a soft wave, a redirected part, none of it reaches its full power if you are getting this last thing wrong. And most women over 60 are getting it very, very wrong because it is the one piece of advice that got the exact opposite of the truth passed down. This is the secret I promised you at the start, and I saved it for last because it is the most powerful thing I found. It is about color, specifically the color of your hair against the color of your scalp. Here is the rule most of us absorbed. Cover the gray and go dark to look youthful and polished. Dark hair, we were told, looks rich and full and healthy. So generations of us have been dyeing our thinning hair a deep, solid, all-over brown or black, often with a cool, ashy tone, thinking we were making it look thicker and younger. I did it. I dyed mine dark for years, convinced the darker it was, the fuller it looked. It is backward. And once a colorist explained the actual principle to me, I could not believe how obvious it was. Here's the buried truth, the one that runs through professional color work but almost never reaches us. The greater the contrast between your hair color and your scalp color, the more visible your thinning becomes. Think about it. Your scalp is pale, pinkish, or light. When you put dark hair over a pale scalp, every gap, every part line, every sparse patch shows up as a sharp contrast. Dark hair against light skin, like ink dots on white paper. The darker and more solid your hair, the more that pale scalp screams through wherever the hair is thin. You have turned your thinning into a high-contrast spotlight. Now flip it. When your hair color sits closer to your scalp color, lighter, softer, warmer, the contrast drops. The gaps blur. Where the scalp peeks through, it no longer shrieks against dark strands. It melts into a similar tone. The thinning simply disappears into a soft, even blur. This is why lighter hair almost always looks fuller than dark hair on a thinning scalp. Not because there's more of it, because the eye can no longer find the gaps. This is the principle colorists use when they blend soft highlights or warm lowlights around the face and part line. And it's why a shadow root and softly blended color looks so much fuller than a solid block of dark dye. The whole game is reducing the distance between your hair color and your skin, so your scalp stops betraying you. And here's the part that turns it from theory into something you can act on this weekend. You do not need to go platinum blonde. You do not need to strip your hair or damage it or spend a fortune. You simply need to soften, warm, and lighten even a little. If you have been dyeing solid dark, going even 2 shades lighter and adding warmth, think soft golden brown, warm honey, a gentle caramel, a buttery blonde rather than an ashy one, will immediately reduce the contrast with your scalp and make your hair look denser. Warm tones sit closer to the pink and gold of scalp and skin than cool ashy tones do, which is exactly why that fashionable cool ash everyone was pushed toward can make thin hair look thinner and, frankly, harder and older against aging skin. And if you're gray or going gray, hear me, because this is the biggest gift in all of it. Soft silver and white and salt and pepper are some of the most flattering colors possible for thinning hair, precisely because they are light. Light hair against a light scalp is almost no contrast at all. So all those years we spent fighting the gray, covering it with dark dye to look younger, we may have been making our hair look thinner the whole time. The gray you were told to hide might be the very thing that makes your hair look fuller and softens your whole face. Letting it grow into a bright, well-conditioned silver, or blending it softly rather than blocking it out with dark color, can take years off in a way no volumizer ever will.
Let me put the whole picture together, because now you can see how every piece connects. Thin hair looks thinner when strands separate and reveal scalp, so we soften the curl and keep the hair together. Thin hair looks thinner when the ends are carved into wispy layers, so we keep a blunt, weighted line. Thin hair looks thinner when it is teased and lifted into see-through gaps, so we get our volume from moving the part and drying upside down instead of from breakage. And thin hair looks thinner when dark, solid color turns every gap into a high-contrast spotlight, so we lighten, warm, and soften the color until the scalp stops showing through. Every single one of these is about the same thing, reducing the contrast in the gaps that reveal how much hair you do not have, so the eye sees how much hair you do have. Not one of them requires more hair, not one of them requires youth, and barely any of them require money. I think about that stylist leaning over my chair telling me shorter would be easier at my age. She was not cruel, she was just repeating.